Hey everybody, welcome to episode 5 of Around the Verse. I'm Sandy Gardner and...
I'm Ben Lesnick.
What did you do this week, Ben?
My wife and I had a Planet of the Apes marathon to get ready for the new movies. What did you do?
I went to the League of Legends Championship Series with James Pugh on Friday. Why are you laughing? That was 5 hours of esports fun. And then I did a couple of boxing workouts on the weekend, and I sucked. I thought I was going to die halfway through. What else did I do? And I watched the World Cup soccer, aka football.
Well, let's jump back to Star Citizen. We have 200,000 backers now able to access multiplayer in Arena Commander. That's quite a jump from the 60,000 it was last week, and this change has taught us quite a bit. We're seeing a lot of lag in areas, some rubber banding, all issues that we're working to resolve right now in 12.5, which is our next patch.
And 12.5 also adds something else, something quite deadly.
That's right. There's another new Vanduul enemy out there, and it's up to you guys to find him. So once 12.5 has been patched to your Arena Commander, get out there and try to be the very first person to grab a screenshot and survive.
Find him, shame. I thought it might be female. But anyway, okay. 10 for the chairman logo competition continues. We've seen some impressive submissions, but you could top them all. So.
Yep, you got another week. Post your submissions to the forum. Somebody out there is going to create the new 10 for the chairman logo. Could be you.
Gamescom tickets are just about sold out, so it's going to be quite some party.
That's 2,000 Star Citizen fans. It's going to be quite an event. Well, let's go over to customer service, where I believe they have some cool new merchandise for us to check out.
Hi, I'm Alexis.
And I'm James.
And we are here with this week's customer service report.
Sweet.
This week I have an update on some of the merchandise that we've been working on. We are going to be having these very cool personalized Star Citizen dog tags.
Thanks.
Some playing cards, which are still in progress.
Thanks.
And this very cool towel, which the finished version will be black with white embroidery, because we realized that a white towel for a bunch of guys probably isn't the best idea.
Thanks.
And if you're a subscriber, this week you'll get your monthly subscriber flair. This month is going to be a very cool jukebox for your hanger, and you'll be able to load up your MP3s into it and play your own music.
And that should be in every subscriber's hanger tomorrow.
And we also have to say thank you to one of our backers for dropping this off at the office this week.
Thanks. Oh my God, thanks.
And now it's time for news from Around the Verse.
It was a short week for Star Citizen's team, but still a very busy one. Let's look at this module by module.
Arena Commander, bug fixes, and...
Bug fixes. Team is working to resolve a lot of the lag issues you're seeing with Arena Commander right now, and we're expecting that 12.5 is going to put things right in a lot of areas where they're not right now.
Team in the UK is fixing issues with AMD processors and some other more minor graphical glitches. Work continues on New Horizon as well.
And while certainly a lot of the focus has been on fixing bugs, we're also working to get new ships into the game. The damage states for the Cutlass are in progress, and we're working on modeling the Mustang in engine.
We finished an update for the Vandal Swarm mode, which you can play with 12.5. Get out there and see what's changed.
1-2 Squadron 42, the team over in the UK, has finished their script review for Mission 4, and they're also working on some of the more advanced technologies for more complex missions.
They're also reviewing some new technologies that will help us build a better single-player experience, including the character customization technology from our friends at Warhorse.
And finally, they are whiteboxing the interior of the Shubin mining station. You probably saw the external shots a little earlier in the year, and now they're building the insides. Wonder what those could be for.
Persistent Universe. Tony Zurovec is visiting the team in Canada this week, organizing our next push into Persistent Universe development.
Meanwhile, the team in Austin is drilling down on version 2.0 of the game design document, working out things like missions, mining systems, commodities, contraband, and of course the economy.
We've also created miniature star systems to simulate the first 5 locations. That's part of the process for creating a system layout tool.
And now for the part you all really want to hear about, ship development. Team in the UK has been greyboxing a veritable armada of military ships, including the Gladius, Gladiator, Javelin, all the cool UEE naval-focused ships that are going to be used for Squadron 42, and incidentally will be available in Star Citizen. They've also begun concepting the F-8 Lightning and a ground vehicle that you will be seeing more of in the very near future.
Austin and Behavior are doing 3D concepting on the 890 Jump, Carrack, Herald, Caterpillar, and Vandal Collector.
Meanwhile, modelers all over the company are working on bringing the Mustang, Cutlass, and Constellation variants into the CryEngine.
Platform, the team at Turbulent is working on our online store and the leaderboards.
Great thing about leaderboards is it's gonna take Star Citizen to the next level. You'll be able to compete with your friends. You'll be able to see how you compare to the rest of the world in various multiplayer and single player modes. It's gonna be cool to have that in. Let's go over to William for this week's MVP.
Hey everybody, I'm lead moderator Will, here to bring you this week's MVP. This week's MVP goes to Xenoshaft for his thread about 100% true Chris Roberts facts. Here's a few of my favorites.
Sharks Watch, Chris Roberts Week on TV.
For his first science project, Chris Roberts created the Force.
Thank you very much, Xenoshaft. You're this week's MVP.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Bug Hunters. What's the name of the show? Bug Smashes! So as you can see, the freelancer freaking out, and this is what you would see in your hangar in the little display case model. It's pretty much just the LODs freaking out, and the LODs are the level of detail, and it's, you know, we have high meshes and low meshes, and we switch between them depending upon certain variables like how far are you, is it, you know, on the left side of you, is it on the right side of you, is it a little tiny piece on your screen, then we don't need to render this whole big high quality mesh. Instead we could render this little tiny small mesh to increase your frame rate. And in the hangar, this little guy was just switching between the high mesh and the low mesh like every other frame, which is not ideal. And as you can see right here and in the engine, as I move around, he's flickering like crazy. What this is, if I turn on a little debug draw, you can see two colors rapidly going back and forward, and that is representing two different types of LODs. So what we have here is our LODs are flickering like crazy. There. This bug was actually assigned to one of our graphics engineers here in LA named Oka. From what he found was, in this particular instance of the rendering, the LOD calculations were getting calculated twice, once in one area and then once in another area. And what was happening is it was taking the calculations of the first, LOD calculations of which one it should use based on distance, angle, blah, blah, blah. And it was taking that information to do the same thing, but this time, because it already picked the information, it was already diluted, so when it tried to determine which LOD to pick, it was picking the wrong one. We also have the issue of floating point error in this case, because the values that were changing were so minute that every other frame it would be a little bit, it would be 1 or it'd be 0 or it'd be 1 or it'd be 0 or it'd be 1 or it'd be 0, and it just happened, all the time after these little fun calculations. Alright, so this guy was actually a little tricky to find, mostly because this only happened on static geometry. If we actually threw this into a real ship, it wouldn't flicker, it would work correctly. But if we actually created this thing called a geom entity, which means it's going to be a static mesh, then the error would start happening. And what we had to do in order to investigate that was literally look through all the interesting parts of where LOD calculations were happening, pop on our debugger, tell the frame to advance, step through all the code, and then look at all the information that was happening. In this case, in this particular frame, I got LOD 0, which means it's going to choose the highest mesh. And this time I got 1. Oh, I got 3. What else are we going to get? 2. 3. 2. So yeah, it's flipping back and forward. In this particular area of the code, we're noticing, the LODs are rapidly changing, so we had to step through the call stack, step all the way back to see where this LOD variable was getting calculated. So if we read actually this little comment that Oka put in, it'll better facilitate what was happening. And I quote, the min distance affects the values of int distance real that is passed to this function, possibly to bias the LOD level for pre-catching materials. But for static objects, the LOD calculation above is a prediction that may not match the actual desired LOD level when min distance is 0. As objects alternate between the two nodes stacks from frame to frame, this results into LOD flickering. In plain English, the previous LOD calculations were more of a prediction to figure out, maybe I should be this LOD, maybe I should not be this LOD. And then down the road in this particular area is where it has all the actual facts that it could actually reliably calculate the LOD before sending it off to the renderer. And as you can see with the fix Oka provided, made sure that the prediction LOD calculations were not used, and instead we made sure that we use actual real calculations in what LOD we wanted. Woo! No flickering. And it's now rainbow colors. We should just leave this mode on. Have all the ships different colors depending upon how you look at it. Right, Dan? Yeah, he agrees. Why are they doing extension cords?
I have no idea.
Okay.
And here's James talking to our lead technical designer, Dan Tracy.
Hey guys, I'm here with Dan Tracy, lead technical designer on Star Citizen. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great, James. How are you?
Sweet. You want to get some questions from the fans?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Awesome. This first question comes from Isogen. Can you shed some light on the challenges of getting the multi-crew ships into the DFM?
A lot of the things with getting multi-crewed vehicles up and running with DFM range from anywhere from like the multiplayer, getting a lot of people set up in the same ships, getting everybody in the same hangar to start with as well. But before we even get to that level, what we need to really look at is like, especially with the multi-crewed ships like the Constellation, is a lot of the interior kind of physics. So the biggest problem with a lot of previous game titles is when you're walking around on a surface that's actually moving underneath you, usually with the network lag, it's actually like you're updating
I got you.
slower versus the platform underneath you. And that's usually
weird looking.
Yeah, exactly. That's usually due to two things. Is one, the physics update thread is not actually like updating you relative to itself. So we're actually coming up with a unique solution, which is setting up like an interior physics grid. And what that means is like you have your world. Just imagine a 3D kind of cube, right? You have your world space, right? And you have all the ships kind of flying around inside of it. But each individual ship, what we're doing is looking at separating out their interior physics.
You're giving them like their own little physics.
Yes,
inside
exactly.
of the grander physics of the actual
game. Not quite inside of it, but actually detached
gotcha.
from. So think of it like a world within a world, but it's actually separated from the exterior one. So what it does is like it removes everything from the world physics grid and moves it out to somewhere else on its own. So then that way you can actually move around on your own physics grid, but the renderer still updates as if you were actually inside of, so you visibly you see everybody walking around as if they're doing it normally. So that's one of the big multi-crew ones that we're running into. The second one that we're actually looking at doing is a lot to do with the ships. Like I know a lot of people actually found a lot of bugs with like the Constellation, the Freelancer, just sitting in their hangar and they're just like, oh, I've been mucking around with something and like, oh, I made the chair kind of flip up and down. So the biggest problem that we found with that is that we don't actually have like a state machine to handle all these different states. So especially with multi-crewed vehicles, a lot of people are going to be pressing buttons all at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So like everything inside of the constellation, hey, I want access to my turret. No, I want access to the turret as well. No, I want.
And then make sure all those variables fit together.
Exactly.
Without
So
creating a cacophony of garbage.
Exactly. Like, do you know what a state machine is?
Yes.
The state machine, just to highlight exactly
For everybody
what it is.
else.
For everybody else.
I honestly didn't know. I'm not. I'll stop lying. I didn't know.
So the state machine itself is, we have like a series of events that need to play in a particular order. So it's just like a tree that actually strings together a bunch of different commands for what state it starts with, and then what are the different conditions to go to the next state. So like, perfect example. When I walk up to a door and I press the button, it first asks the door, is the door closed? Okay, if the door is closed, is it locked? If it's not locked, then I can press the button and it's supposed to go into the open state.
Okay.
Then as soon as it goes into the open state, then we can actually set up a bunch of different things. Oh, is there a timer for it? Is there a sensor? You know, like
so crazy.
kind of a whole series of events that just go in like a particular order depending on, you know, your different questions that you're actually asking the particular state. So it's like, hey, if it's locked now, okay, what can I do with it? Well, since it's locked, I'm not actually not able to open it. Or another one could be like, when I'm actually pressing the button, does it even have power to open in the first place?
Oh, okay.
So if it doesn't have power and it's not locked, then it's just still closed, and you can use like a crowbar or something to actually like wrench it open. But if it's locked, then maybe you have to use like a breaching mechanic in that, and you actually have to like set up a charge so that you actually blow it open, or the drill mechanic to actually cut through the thing so that you can actually tear out the lock and then get inside of it. So that spans to the whole ship. So it's like, the constellation is a ginormous headache in regards to this, because we have things like the Merlin that we have to consider down at the bottom, right? And then, is the Merlin even there? Can I open the hatch because the Merlin's not there? Is it going to like open to space? Is it actually sealed?
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Because so if the Merlin's inside the constellation, does the Merlin also being dictated by that physics engine you put outside of the normal physics engine? Yeah, that's right.
The interior physics grid.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the Merlin itself is actually going to be, when it actually comes up and is attached to the bottom side of the constellation, it's going to be actually bound to the ship's physics.
Okay.
So it's actually very similar to what we do with like the items for the ships. It's just like a very similar process where it's going to be requesting to see, okay, is it actually going to be docked? And if it's docked, then it just binds itself to the vehicle, so then that way it's treated as one, like the whole constellation plus the Merlin is treated as like one object, but it's still its own separate object that receives damage and then takes, it has its own hit points and takes its own damage by itself. So if you're actually still shooting at the Merlin when it's docked with the constellation, you can still damage both the constellation docking clamps as well as the Merlin itself.
Cool.
So that, with the...
so what you're saying is it's
There's
confusing.
a lot. Well, there's a lot to it as well, and like the other ones that we're tying into, which UK is actually helping us out with a lot, is a lot of the multi-crewed seat design. So then we have different seat stations that actually perform different functions. So for DFM, what we're actually looking at doing is setting up several different stations. So you have like an engineering guy, you have like a tactical ops guy, we have the general captain, or it could be somebody else who is actually the helmsman. So in that way, each station is very, very specific to what role that they're actually trying to do. Other things that we're looking at doing, we're going to look at starting with that. So we're assigning specific roles to different seats to see how it plays out. But in the overall scheme of things, we're looking at doing upgrade packages so that we can actually transfer control from one station to another. So think of like very similar like Star Trek, where you actually, there's people that have boarded us and they've taken over the bridge, but we quickly taken all the helm control and put it down into the engineering section.
So awesome.
Yeah, so we're looking at doing stuff like that, right? But we need, for example, the state machine in order to kind of drive that stuff, so that way we can actually push transfer different mechanics over to another. But looking at it more simplistically, we can have things like in the Super Hornet, you can have the pilot up at the front where he's actually flying around. And then let's imagine he dies. Oh no, what am I going to do as the co-pilot in the back? Well, I need to transfer those controls. Otherwise, you're going to be, shit out of luck.
Yeah. Oops.
You're going to be SOL on that. Anything with that you can actually transfer control. Even things as simple as like, hey, you're a co-pilot of me in the Super Hornet. I'm going to give you like all the missile stuff because I'm too busy kind of flying the ship. I need somebody else to kind of lock on to the targets that we're attacking. Or maybe I'm actually like taking a bunch of damage, so I'm going to transfer like all shield control to you so that you can actually buffer us in the appropriate section. So it's like all front or all to the sides, or we have missiles incoming, so I give you like countermeasure control so that way you can actually do something with that. So it's all about like this active control of being able to assign different roles to different seats, so then that way you can maximize the capability of your ship, because one person trying to do everything is really tough.
Yeah.
as you know. But yeah, there's tons of challenges. So sorry to go off on a ramble here.
No, that was awesome, dude.
Awesome.
All right.
What's the next question?
From Azrael Domanov. I'm interested in the technology that will allow us to walk around our ships as they are flying without the game physics causing the ship to run us over. Can you explain how it works and how it's coming along?
Oh, well, yeah, I
kind
of went over that already. So yeah, it was, to just sum it up again, it's the interior physics grid, and that is actually kind of extrapolated from the world physics itself. So that's actually the setup where you're going to be actually following the physics of the vehicle itself and the interior, and this goes to all the ships that have an interior. So it'll be available for the 300i, the Aurora, of course the Constellation, Freelancer, and also the cap ships. Very, very important that we have it for the cap ships as well. So then, yeah, all that will be updated also over the network, so that way you're actually making sure that you're on that particular setup. That as well could be used, now that I think about it, we could actually use that same setup for like a lot of you guys probably noticed with the physics of the elevator, where you're actually kind of clipping down through it. We could probably use the same thing for that as well. So that way you're actually specifically riding the elevator properly up and down on top of it.
Look at that, we're problem solving here too.
Exactly, there you go.
The next question is from Starfriend123. How do you plan to realize the initial, without player control, landing sequence from orbit down to planet with regard to loading the surfaces, visibility of the surface, and the weather? Will we always have cloudy weather on every planet? Is every planet Seattle?
I don't want to get fired with this one.
Okay.
Well, okay, we ran a bunch of prototypes with this, and I did one myself, actually, with just some of the assets that I could use. I had like a small moon. This by no means are we like for sure going one way or the other.
This is a test.
This is totally a test, so I'm not going to say one way or another how we're actually doing it, but these are all these different engineering ideas that we're coming up with. Is the one test that I did was kind of like this moon structure, and it was like a small planetoid that was, what was it? It was about like 30 kilometers in diameter. So it was like representative of like kind of like how you would actually fly down to an asteroid, but it proves a point where you can actually use, do you know, like first, we actually call it streaming, so that you're actually similar to LODs, where you're actually popping in certain LODs, and you're populating the environment
LODs
as you get
for
level of detail.
Thank you.
So, so as I say, LODs. So you're actually streaming in a bunch of different assets. So you're populating them from afar, so that you don't really see like what's going on. But when you get closer and closer and closer to it, more detail kind of comes in.
Yeah.
So then that way you have like more things that are appearing right next to you. So for instance, like let's take the example of when you're looking down on Broken Moon, you have the big terraformers that are shooting down onto the planet. Imagine that you're actually able to see the planet's surface, and you can actually see one of the cities. Imagine what it looks like from like outer space, from like looking down on one of the cities. It's kind of just like square, and there's just some gray bits. You know, there's not much to it there. That could easily be like a texture, or maybe with some basic cube geometry on different locations, just to give you the general idea of like what's there. And then any major shapes that you see from afar, that's what they should be. And then when you get closer and closer and closer, then they actually detail
comes
in.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what we wanted to do with that, with the idea with the cloudiness and maybe even like going through the atmosphere when things are all burning up, right, is we wanted to kind of obscure the pop that was happening with like transferring those art assets into more detailed assets. But there's other things that we can use with the CryEngine already, which is actually the LOD dissolver. So what that means is like when you're actually looking at something coming in, it kind of like, it's like inverse dissolving, so that you have like different specks of it that are actually slowly kind of bleeding in, so that they're actually like 1 pixel at a time is swapping in and out, right?
I get it.
So then that way it's not just a hard pop from like, you see something that's like 4 and then it pops to like 5
it's not just an
or whatever.
instant
Yeah,
change,
exactly.
it's a
So
slow gradual change into a more
exactly. So
really understandable image.
Totally. And there's other techniques that you can add on top of that, so that way it's like less intrusive as to seeing, oh, I can see the individual pop between all these different LODs. So there's the other kind of standard one that we used in Crisis as well, where you're actually overlapping some of the LODs on top of each other, and so they're actually double drawing each other, but that's kind of dangerous, so that's why there's a little bit of the dissolve that's happening, so you still see both of them at the same time, but they're coming in and overlapping gradually on top of each other. But you still see them kind of on top of and basically inside of one another. So as they progress more and more into their details, the trick is you ultimately want to have art have it so that their silhouette never changes and the overall color scheme never really changes. So then that way any of the details that are coming in is just refinement. So you could have like just a cube that has a texture of windows, and then you build out the windows from there. So then that way like the lighting doesn't change, the silhouette doesn't change, the overall kind of model doesn't change, but the detail just comes in further and further. Now just expand that to a macro level and just think of like an entire cityscape has to do that all at the same time. So that's a monumental amount of work. The thing that I did as well for the planetoid was...
Terra's a beautiful city.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of unique shapes, especially with Terra, that we got to consider when we actually go forward with this. So it's just a huge undertaking trying to set up all those environments. But again, going back to the idea of like everything has like the cloudiness or like when you're going through atmosphere, the bigger question is like, what do I do with moon planets that don't have atmosphere, right? So then we have to come up with a creative solution for that. So again, like these are ideas that we're using for all this setup, and we've even looked at other world kind of streaming engines and games that have done it prior to us, and we're looking at kind of re-engineering a similar style approach with that.
Cool.
But yeah.
Dang, awesome, man.
Cheers.
Next question comes from Silver with 2 V's. In regard to massive objects like planets, moons, massive asteroids, and stars in particular, what kind of scale can we expect to see in the final game? Is the planet from the Broken Moon Arena Commander map a good measure? Also, is there any news on the subject of planetary objects, i.e. planets, moons, etc., orbiting its solar system, or will they be static? So I guess he wants to know...
So yeah, two-parter. What are basically size of the planet and do they orbit? Size of the planet, realistically, we don't know. We have to try it. We have to find out. We hope to get something as large as Broken Moon. But like I said, with the test that I was doing, the planetoid of being only 30 kilometers, that's nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
I remember there's that
Could be a space station.
There's that bug we put up where there was that planet and then there was a hornet and the scale was all jacked up. So the hornet was like the size of Asia and on the silhouette of the planet.
Yeah, exactly.
That was an awesome bug.
Exactly. Oh, that's totally it. So yeah, we've been playing around with the ideas, but the other biggest problem that we've had with that, and actually touch base on that a little bit, is the size of everything. The size of space and time.
Space is kind of big, right?
Space is huge. So Chris talked about a lot where we're looking at moving over to what's called double bit precision. So essentially what that will allow us to do is utilize a space that theoretically can have like 1/100th scale of Earth to Pluto.
That's still huge.
That's massive. That's
huge.
Massive. So what, again, I don't want to say that we're confirming that we're doing this.
It's just stuff we're looking into.
Yes,
like, these
exactly.
are problems
So,
and we're trying to find solutions.
Exactly. So
people understand that.
we might do something that's similar to like 1/100 scale of actual size of planets, possibly. But it's hard to say because, especially with all the unknowns that come with like changing over to double precision. Like I'm not a physics programmer, so I couldn't actually like talk to you about the intricacies about that stuff, and a lot of that stuff still goes over my head. But it'll allow the designers to actually set up these massive areas so that we can actually go between these massive levels, so that they're actually just like sectors within the solar system, so that they're kind of hotspots. So it's like this area has, a golden horizon space station. This area is like, Terra or whatever. And then you would have probably different sections that would allow you to go down to the planet. But the actual worlds themselves, it's hard to say. They could be anywhere from, 30 kilometers to several thousands of kilometers. So again, we have to try something and figure out where we're actually going to go with it from
Cool,
there.
dude.
Yeah, so it'll be quite awesome in the next coming months.
Awesome, man. So what about the second part of the question? Is there any news on planetary orbits?
So planetary orbits is a tricky one because especially with what we're looking at is with the interior physics and how we're moving everything around. So the biggest worry is like everything that's actually happening on the planet side, can we actually extrapolate that and use maybe similar to the interior physics where we're actually removing that from the world physics, so then that way that stuff is all moving relative to itself? Possibly, but the biggest worry with that as we transition going forward is like if we go into atmospheric flight coming in from orbit, right, dynamically changing that over. When's that spot going to happen?
That's right. At what point do you leave the world physics to the compartmentalized physics?
Yes, that's even without having all the planets actually moving and orbiting, that's already a big concern for us. And now on top of that, you have to throw in the idea that these planets are still moving within space. So this is something that we're definitely going to have to investigate, and we don't know right now, so we'll keep you guys up to date as to what we find out. So.
Well, okay, dude. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're usually pretty busy.
Oh, you totally, dude. I've probably got like a million emails already now.
Well, then, aren't you happy we kind of took you out of it for a bit?
A little bit. It's actually really nice and comfy down here. I think I'm gonna sleep here for a bit.
Dude, don't sit back. Well, first of all, I can't even touch the ground if I sit back this far.
That's all right.
All right.
I'm gonna sleep here for a bit.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers. Later.
Next week, we'll sit down with another technical designer of ours, Calix Renault. And we have a surprise announcement.
That's right. A couple weeks ago in this space, we showed you the first concept images of the Gladius light fighter. And we're now far enough along in the concepting process that we feel comfortable offering it up for sale. So we are doing a concept sale this weekend, running for a week. The Gladius will be available in the ship viewer. You can check it out, see the stats, learn why this ship is so cool, and if you want, pick one up.
I don't have one of those. I think I might get one.
I don't have one yet, and yet is the operative term. They're going to be really cool in the dogfighting once we get them in, which may happen sooner than later.
You've got a retaliator, right?
I do have a retaliator. It'll probably be a little while until we have
Ben
those
and I
flying.
are pushing all of these ships along to get them in the hangar, to get them flyable. We crack the whip in these meetings.
You saw that like 12-step process for getting a ship into Star Citizen last week. Sandy and I are like steps 1 through 9. It's uncanny. That's it for Around the Verse this week. Tell your friends. We don't have traditional marketing. We don't stick Star Citizen signs on the side of a bus. We rely on our backers to spread the word about how cool this game is going to be. So.
But now that you mention that, Ben, that's quite a good idea. We should have Star Citizen on billboards. Better than that nasty, the Strain one. Have you seen that? You probably don't see that.
Well, I've noticed that Hollywood has billboards that are totally different from anywhere else in the world. So.
Yeah, there's one with this eyeball and a... Yeah, anyway. Yes, that is it from Around the Verse. Come join us next week.
See you around the verse.
See you around the verse.